guys, thanks for joining us tonight for our virtual class on tree stand safety. So I'm Chris Hearn. I'm the West Tennessee Field Rep, Tennessee Wildlife Federation, and I work primarily with the Hunt and Fishing Academy. I've enjoyed sharing my knowledge of the outdoors with you guys through these virtual classes. And tonight we're going to be covering tree stand safety. And I'm no tree stand safety instructor by no means, but I have been hunting out of a tree stand most of my life, and I look forward to answering some of you guys' questions and covering a little bit about the type gear and stuff that all goes into being safe when using a tree stand. Also on the call tonight, Taylor Martin. He's the manager of the Hunt and Fishing Academy. Taylor, would you like to introduce yourself and tell the participants a little bit about the Zoom function that the layout for tonight's class?
Yeah, so hey everybody, like Chris said, my name is Taylor Martin. I'm the manager for the Hunting and Fishing Academy for the Wildlife Federation. Grew up, born and raised out in West Tennessee, and like Chris, been hunting out a tree stand most of my life, ever since really started hunting deer. So looking forward to tonight. I'm kind of going to be in the background. Chris is going to run most of the talking points tonight, but I'll be kind of sitting here in the background running Zoom. If you have any questions for us tonight, we can't see or hear you. Your cameras are off and you're on mute. But if you have a question for us, the best way to ask it to us is put it in that Q&A feature down there at the bottom of your screen. And then if you have anything that you'd like to share, you can pop it into that chat function as well. You could send it to me and Chris, or send it to everybody else that's on the call tonight. But other than that, I'll hand it back over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Taylor. So I'd like to start off by telling you guys a little bit about what tonight's virtual class is about, and that is tree stand safety. And again, there's a ton of resources out there, and I'm going to send these resources out in an email tomorrow, some different videos and different courses that you can dive deeper into these subjects. But the main thing I want to accomplish tonight is, if you guys have any questions revolving around tree stand safety, I'm going to do my best to answer those. I'm going to talk about one of the most important things to me is tree selection. And then we're going to cover all the different parts of the safety equipment that goes into safely being in a tree stand. And then we're going to break it down by the three basic types of tree stands, which is ladder stands, hang-ons, and climbing stands. And we're going to talk about how to stay safe in those different types. So first, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about tree selection. So there are certain things that I look for when I'm picking a tree to put my stand in, no matter if it's a ladder stand, a climbing stand, or a hang-on stand. And that is, we want a good straight tree. Probably the scariest experience that I've ever had in a tree stand was caused by a tree that was really slanted. I was in a climbing stand, and basically, if you think about the way gravity works, it's going to go to the downhill side. So even though you're sitting on the slanted side tilted back into the tree, it allows, with anything, if your straps get loose or something like that, your weight is going to cause that stand to want to go around the tree and go to the slanted side, or the downhill slide of that tree. So always try to choose a good straight tree. Make sure it's big enough to support your weight and going to be able to not be blowing in the wind or causing any kind of hazard there. Also, make sure the tree is good and alive. So, sometimes it might be a little bit harder to tell in the winter when the leaves are gone, but definitely this time of year, if you're hanging a stand and there's no leaves on it, then it's probably not a healthy tree, and definitely don't want to put a stand in it. Also, year to year, if you leave a tree stand in a tree, the health of that tree can go downhill over the years. So that's something to keep in mind. You just make sure that your tree is good and healthy and going to be able to support the weight of the stand and yourself. Also, I look for a tree that has cover, or at least has cover around it. And in a lot of ways, if you have a tree that has cover and limbs growing up underneath it, or small saplings that have leaves up in front of where your stand's going to be, you can really get away with not being near as high as you would if if you didn't have that cover. So if we think about why we use tree stands in general, it's a lot to get out of that, where deer are looking on the ground for some kind of danger. We're trying to get above that line of sight. So in a lot of ways, finding cover is just as important as getting high. And then also, I want to touch back on I want to talk about the type of tree. And I'm going to dive in deeper into this when we get to the climbing stand part. But there's certain types of trees that has really hard barks, and it's not going to allow the teeth on those stands to bite in like it would on a softer bark tree. So some of the types of trees that I like to avoid is sycamores. Most hickories are real hard bark, what I call a scaly bark hickory. I avoid them just because it's real loud, generally speaking, with those big scales on the tree. And then even like what I call a pig nut hickory with the smoother bark is just a very hard bark tree. You can get away with a ladder stand or hang on in those type trees, but definitely with a climbing stand, you normally want to avoid that. I know I'm talking about types of tree stands already, and I'm going to cover that here in just a minute, but that is some things I wanted to cover. Then another real hard bark tree is an ironwood tree. And there's some others out there, but in Tennessee, those are the ones that really come to mind. So next, before we dive into the different types of tree stands, I want to go over the different safety equipment that goes into being safe when you're in a tree stand. And the most basic and most popular, widely used piece of safety equipment is your safety harnesses. And they come in a lot of different styles. If you'll look at the one on the left there, this is the basic strap type. It's very adjustable. It's lightweight. They're a little bit more economical. As a matter of fact, most of the time when you buy a stand, you're going to get something like that on the left. You're going to get maybe even a little bit cheaper version without the pads and things like that. But it does suffice. The only thing is it might not be quite as comfortable as something like the best style on the right. The advantages of the best, you can see the pockets there, and you can actually order this in custom fit sizes. So you would order it almost like you would an actual clothing vest or a shirt. So you can kind of customize the size of that a little bit more. The next piece of safety equipment I want to cover, and these, at least to my knowledge, are fairly new. I remember when they first, I think Hunter, one of the harness manufacturers, come up with what was called the Lifeline. And this is that pictured on the left. This is actually something that will go all the way from the tree, the base of the tree, down at where your ladder starts, all the way up past your tree stand. You hook onto that, and as you climb a ladder, or if you're climbing using a climbing stand, you can actually use that climbing stand or climb that tree and be able to go up and down the tree, and you're always hooked to that. And then on the right is a lineman's belt, and I'm going to talk about ways you can use that. The most popular use for a lineman's belt is when you're hanging steps, like strap-on steps to a tree, or if there's a few different purposes, but generally speaking, hang on steps or strap-on steps, that's when I use a lineman's belt. Both of these pieces of equipment use what's called a prusik knot, and you can see a little bit in those images the way this knot is going to be able to slide up that rope, and then once it's got pressure on it, it doesn't slide, and that's going to prevent you from falling, but you can slide up and down or come up and down the rope. Another piece of equipment is a pull-up rope. Probably in my mind, the most important thing as far as safety equipment to always utilize. If you're trying to climb up and down a ladder and you got a gun over your shoulder, or you got a backpack and you got all this equipment that you're going to need for the day's hunt, it causes more room for error as far as climbing. and we're going to talk a little bit more about the proper way of climbing. But one of those things is, you always want 3 points of contact, whether that be 2 hands and a foot or, 2 feet and a hand. So you can't do that if you got a bow or a rifle or something in your hand. And you can buy these. I got them. It's pictured there, but I use a lot of parachute cord with little clips. But you can buy a little kit that's got hangers and different things like that for $3 or $4. So there's no excuse not to utilize that pull-up rope. Another thing is these are relief straps, and I had this in my mind when I started building this PowerPoint, and I wasn't sure how much the safety harnesses implemented these. Now, some of the hunter safety systems, like the vest, I know they come with a relief strap, but I went ahead and I pictured something that you can buy separate. And what this is, if you was to fall out of a deer stand, this is a strap that you can deploy. It's basically a stirrup, and you pull that out, you can put your foot in it, and it's going to take pressure off of your legs and all those pressure points from your harness. And I actually was in a manufacturing plant at a time when somebody fell off a lift, and this was before that manufacturing company was using relief straps, and that person went unconscious within about 3 or 4 minutes of hanging there. And it's just because it's reducing blood flow to all parts of the body. So these are very important if you're going to, and another important part of it is, and why I picture the ones that's bought separate, I did notice the hunter safety system was a separate device. It was a separate strap. So there was a chance that you might have it in your backpack or something, or not be thinking about where it's at. And that's not going to do you any good in the situation of a fall. So these, like pictured, they're actually on, you can put them on the harness. They stay there all the time. So no matter what type of release strap you use, the most important thing is to have them on your harness when you fall, or they're not going to do you any good. Okay, if you guys don't have any questions, we're going to move in to the types of tree stands that's out there. And there pictured on the left is a ladder stand. This is probably the most popular, widely used type of tree stand out there. They're very quiet to get up and down, and you can really choose from a lot of different trees when you're utilizing a ladder stand. Another great benefit to a ladder stand is they make some very large platforms, and you can actually get them in like 2-man or 3-man stands. So if you're carrying a youth or something with you, then this is a great stand to utilize, and probably the best one. There in the middle, that's a hang-on stand. So you can see the actual stand itself is separate from the ladder. You use other equipment, whether it's screw-in steps or strap-on steps, to get up to that stand. And then on the right is a climbing stand, and you can actually see it's got a cable that goes around to support the backside of the tree, and then it's got teeth and a V, and actually physics holds you to the tree. You use a jacking system to go move up the tree, and it's probably one of the most comfortable stands there is. Lots of people use climbing stands when hunting on public property just because you can move them so easily, day to day. That stand pictured on the right that's a Summit stand, and probably weighs around 19 or 20 pounds. And once you get a system of taking it on and off the tree, you can do it pretty quickly and quietly. So I want to go into talking about ladder stands, and there's a lot of pieces of a ladder stand that makes it really safe. The secure, already attached ladder. Lots of ladder stands come with a armrest or that gun rest. Not only is this going to add versatility to the stand, but it's also going to make it a little bit safer, just because it's one more barrier to keep you from potentially falling out of that stand. You can see here pictured, this tether is around the tree, and it's at a height of about the top of his head, or right around that. And the reason you want to make sure you got that plenty high enough is in case of a fall, it's going to reduce the drama and the amount of fall before that that safety harness catches. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. Also in this picture, you can see that lifeline system that looks like that he's got, or that could possibly be a pull-up rope. Hard to tell in that picture, but on this one, this guy is fixing to climb this ladder stand, and that is the lifeline system I was talking about. He's clipping on from the ground, and then as he climbs, he can slide that knot up the actual rope itself, completely secured to that from the time that he takes a step off the ground all the way into the stand. The only thing I would do a little different than what he done is, you can see he's got that lifeline tied right to the stand. I probably would like to get the upper end of that lifeline tied up to the tree somewhere. That way, as I get to the actual platform itself, I'm not going to have to unhook and hook to my safety harness until I get up on top of the platform. Or I guess you could actually just stay hooked to the lifeline if it was high enough up at the proper height like we just discussed. Also, when you're climbing, again, maintaining 3 points of contacts, 2 hands and a foot, or 2 feet and a hand at all times. And that goes for whether you're using climbing sticks or actually steps of a ladder stand. So on each of these type tree stands, as I cover them, I put in a slide about hanging tree stands. And the reason I did that is, in my mind and in my experience, this is probably the situation where people cast safety to the side because they're just wanting to get the job done and get this tree stand up, and you're potentially putting yourself at risk in several different ways. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the way I like to hang these tree stands. And again, there's a ton of resources out there when you look up different types, but so to start out, there's lots of different systems that attach ladder stands to the tree. There is actually a system now that involves jaws that hinge, and you can set that stand up. So generally that guy is fixing to start pushing up. He's got a guy behind him pulling on that rope and helping get that stand against the tree. But you can start walking up, as you can imagine, up that ladder till you get it against the tree and get the platform level. The type of system I'm talking about has 2 jaws that's going to hinge with a rope on each end. You can wrap those around the tree and pull tight, and it's actually going to use the jaws to hold it to the tree till you can get up the ladder and cinch that off and actually ratchet strap it and make it more secure. If you don't have that jaw system, generally speaking, I'm going to get that stand leaned up against the tree, get everything level. I'm going to utilize a buddy that's going to, one, help me get a rope wrapped around that tree and tied to the ladder as high as he can reach. And then also going to put pressure against that ladder when you climb up to add that ratchet strap. Once you get your ratchet strap up there, then you should be good then. There is actually a system. I've never used it, but I really like the idea behind it. There's a video that I'm going to attach to the email tomorrow where the guy actually used strap-on steps to get, and also using a lineman's belt. As he hung those, he got up there and secured the strap like that. So you're never climbing up a ladder without it actually secured to the tree. So I really like that system as well. It's a little bit more work, but that's a great way to go ahead and get your lifeline up there and make sure you're completely attached to a tree before you ever start climbing the actual ladder of that ladder stand. And then the next one we're going to talk about, this is a hang-on stand. And again, you can tell it's separate. That's actually climbing sticks all in one row. Sometimes they are separated. There's several different ones out there. There's heavy ones, there's light ones, there's cheap ones, there's expensive ones, and they all serve their purposes. One thing I want to point out about this image is you can see the way the ladder system is up past the stand. So you're climbing up that those climbing sticks up past your platform and then making a horizontal step onto that platform. And that's really the safest way when you're making that transition from your climbing stick to your platform. Also, again, you'll notice the tether on the tree up high to reduce that trauma in case of a fall. And then again, we're going to talk a little bit about hanging a tree stand or hanging a hang-on stand. And this guy is using a lineman's belt down around his waist, and he's also hooked to a lifeline. But you got to be able to get up the tree to hang the top part of that lifeline. So that's where that lineman's belt comes into play. So this is actually looks like spaced out ladder sticks instead of just one solid piece. But that's a little bit about that safety equipment that's used for that. But again, I always like to use a buddy, and this image pictured is the way I hang a hang-on stand. And at the end of that rope, if the image was further up, there's probably a pulley system up on that tree attached to a limb around the base of the tree. So after you've got your ladders, your sticks hung, and potentially your lifeline, go ahead and hang it, and you're strapped on up there, I can take a rope, put it around that pulley. I got one end attached to the hang-on stand. One piece of advice is hang it just like they tied it. They tied it to the top of the back. So in other words, when this gentleman gets done pulling this stand up to me, I'm already in the tree. I can spin that thing around without having to hold any weight and strap it to the tree right where I want it. So with a little bit of planning and the right equipment and a good friend, this is a really good way of hanging these hang-on stands.
Hey, Chris, we got a question from Steven. He asks, which tree stand type would you recommend as a first tree stand for WMA hunts, and why would you recommend it?
If I had to pick one stand and one stand only, I would pick a climbing stand. And I'm going to cover a little bit more about the pieces in this next section. But the reason being is I can take that climbing stand and find a tree. The only thing about it is, and what narrows down your options as far as trees you can climb, is it's got to be limbless, especially on a wildlife management area, because most of them are not going to allow you to cut limbs. So on private property, I carry a limb saw with me all the time. If I've got a tree that's got a little small limb, I climb up to it, cut the limb, keep on going. On a WMA, you can't cut limbs. So you have to find a tree that doesn't have limbs to the height in which you want to hunt. So let's just say 14 to 15 foot, something like that. Still, with that being said, I would pick a climbing stand. Now, also, there is lots of lightweight hang-ons. And matter of fact, I just ordered Hawk helium sticks, and then I've got a little light hang-on, and you can put those little climbing sticks together that weigh 2.5 pounds a piece with about a 10-pound hang-on stand, and you can be pretty mobile like that as well. But to answer your question, I would pick a climbing stand. And then if I had the resources to do it, I would have both, and they would stay in my truck all the time. I would have a lightweight hang-on set with climbing sticks, and then I would also have a climbing stand. And I don't mind telling you, we're not sponsored by any climbing stand companies or anything else, but some of the pictures, and I think it's on the slide that's next here, those Summit stands, the Summit Viper, they've been around a long time. Again, I'm very familiar with them, 18, 19 pounds, and they pack together very well. They're just a good overall stand for a couple $100. But it's just like anything else. There's a million different designs out there. I just really feel safe in those Summits. Hope that answered the question. But on that subject, after hearing my answer about climbing stands being my stand of choice on public property, if I only can have one, I'm going to dive a little bit into why. So, one, you can see I feel it's safe. Most of these climbing stands have that support seat that hangs below a rail. The rail is used to sit on when you're climbing, and then it actually can double based on the amount of slack that you use on your seat. You can hang lower and potentially use that as a gun rest, or you can hang higher, kind of like what he is when you're archery hunting, and be able to clear that rail with your bow. But either way, it prevents you from, it's one more means to keep you from falling out of that tree. Also, if you'll notice in this picture, this guy that stand is kind of leaned back towards the tree. And that's about where I want that stand. I want to have just a little bit of a lean holding me against the tree. And if you think about that, if you was to get off balance or something, I don't want my weight and my momentum going forward out of that tree. This is probably why I chose the stand I did if I only have one on public property. You can see there, this is pretty similar to the way I pack mine. These stands can pack together. They've got straps that come with them that can go over your shoulder. The only thing I see that he don't have, I've got my pull-up rope. It's wrapped around that top part of that stand, stays on there all the time. And then there's a bunch of different ways that you can connect those stands. Look like he's got some bungees and stuff like that, but there's actually a strap that comes with most of them that you can cinch all that stuff together. And if you practice this before you go out and plan to hunt, and the more you utilize it while you are hunting, it'll get to the point where you can pretty much set one of these climbing stands up in the dark and never use a light. You know where every piece is, and you'll get a system. And I know a system is a very generic term, but it's everything on my stand has its place. Every bungee, every pull-up rope, the way I attach the two together, everything. And once you get that system down, you can duplicate it over and over. And it's a very effective tool, especially on public land. And then some of the key safety things when dealing with climbing stand is actually getting up and down the tree. One, you want to make sure that you have attached the top and the bottom. And what this is going to do, it's going to allow the situation, it's going to eliminate the situation where your foot slips out of the stirrups on that bottom part, and then you're sitting up there with just the top and no way to get down the tree. So just any kind of little rope, parachute cord. Most stands come with something that's going to allow you to connect both. You can connect them on both sides. That's what most stand manufacturers are going to, that way if it does slip off, it's not going to just be dangling by one side. So generally speaking, you're going to try to secure that on both sides, but give yourself enough slack where you can still make big bites with the stand. Again, adjust the pitch of the stand, lower down the tree. Most trees are going to get smaller as you go up. So you're going to want to start that stand kind of at a bigger angle than what you're going to want to finish, because as you go up that tree, the tree is going to get smaller and the stand's going to level out. And a lot of this is just going to come from experience and looking at different trees and things like that. And then also I keep my pull-up rope tied to that top section. It's right there if I need it. And then when I'm transporting my stand, it's wrapped around it. There is one more little trick, and I hadn't seen this pictured anywhere, but there is some, especially on public property where you can't use a screw-in step or something to hang your bow on. On my climbing stand, on the top part, if you're left-handed, if you're right-handed, you're going to want it on the left side. If you're left-handed, you're going to want it on the right side. But you can attach a bow holder, and the bow holder is going to be used. It kind of uses gravity. It's a V-shaped device. It's pretty easy to find, and I'll try to include it on the email that's going out tomorrow. But it's got that bow out there right on the corner of that climbing stand. You can real quickly grab it and be ready to shoot. So that's our types of deer stands, and I know I've covered a lot of information quick. Have you guys got any questions as we kind of wind down tonight's virtual class?
One thing I'll add, if y'all are thinking about questions, is those lifelines that Chris talked about earlier. They're really good if you're going hunting with somebody else in the same tree as well, because they make tandem lifelines where there's two hook-in spots. So both of you can be connected to the same lifeline. So you only have to hang one when you go up there. It's really good if you're having like a tree stand with a hang on for like a hunter and maybe a mentor, someone to be around to help them, coach them through that first hunt.
If you guys don't have any questions, I just wanted to put this out there, and this is going to be in the email tomorrow. There is actually tree stand safety courses out there, and I'm going to include the link for the follow-up email tomorrow morning. And when you go in and you take this training course, it goes into a lot more detail than what I covered tonight. You know, I kind of covered my take on things. Like, again, I'm not a safety expert when it comes to tree stand. I'm just experienced, and luckily I've made it this far without falling out of one. So I hope you guys got some good information out of that. But there's going to be some links to that training course that's going to go more in depth on the proper techniques there. And
then we did get a couple questions, Chris. Thomas asked if you have any experience or thoughts about tree saddles. He's heard they're a newer option and have some benefits / drawbacks as well.
There is a ton of people swapping to the tree saddles. And again, it's all about reducing weight. And a friend that I hunt with a whole lot has actually went to a tree saddle, and he loves it. You know, you're suspended from the tree. If you're off the base of the tree, it gives you 360 degrees of motion to be able to shoot a bow or shoot a rifle. Almost every stand manufacturer out there has picked up a type of tree saddle, and then there's also support platforms that you can implement as well. I've never personally hunted out of one, but I've heard lots of great things. So if you think about it, if you utilize those steps like we had mentioned before, 2.5 pounds hawk or lone wolf or any of those, they're kind of pricey, but it's all a way of kind of reducing weight. And then you go to a tree saddle, which weighs literally a couple, 3 pounds. You can really get a lightweight setup if you're hunting way off the road on public properties and things like that. So yeah, that is definitely an awesome option.
And then Matt asked in the resources that we'll be sending out to everybody in the next couple days, if there's a video of someone using a climbing stand.
I will add it in and make sure that we get a link of a video there. But again, you know, this is one of those things that's almost impossible to describe with words. But if you think about the way that you're using gravity to pull yourself up that tree, you've got adjustments for different size of trees. And the biggest piece of advice, and I'm sure they'll cover it in some of these videos, is you're just starting out. First, you want to find a tree that don't really shrink as it goes up, and then also start out with a little bit more of a slant than you want to be when you get on up the tree. But yeah, we'll definitely include a video of how to use a climbing setup.
And Chris mentioned like a very popular climbing stand is the Summits. They got quite a few different models, kind of however you want to go, bigger ones or smaller ones. And they have quite a few videos out of people using those specific stands too that do a pretty good job of explaining how to use them along with the safety equipment. All right, I think we're good, Chris.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight, and enjoy the rest of your night.